We'll get going right away because we have a very interesting panel. As you can see, we have 7 members on the panel. Just before we get going, I'd like to thank again Smith's Detection for offering the coffee and networking opportunity. We move on to our third building block, which we spoke about a lot this morning, actually, throughout the day, technology and innovation. To lead us into that, I'm happy to introduce, well, she was here before, and I'll introduce her again, Sonia Hifdi. She is the head of the Security Measures Office at the Directorate General of Civil Aviation of France. I'd like to just give a few notes on her biography to position and provide context for the discussion today. She started her career as the head of the Explosives Detection Unit within the French Civil Aviation Technical Center in 2004. After 5 years, she moved to the Office of Security Measures to manage the Air Carrier Security Program. Since January 2016, as head of the Office of Security Measures, she focuses on defining the national AVSEC policy to ensure coordination among the main departments within the French government in charge of aviation security. And since 2013, she is the chair of the ICAO Guidance Material Task Force, and since 2014 is the French representative to the ICAO Aviation Security Panel and the Rapporteur of the ICAO Working Group in Innovation in Aviation Security. She is the current vice chair of the ICAO Aviation Security Panel. Sonia, all yours. Bon courage.
Merci. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I have the honor to be the moderator for this session, which is the last of the day. And I would like to thank ICAO for asking me to lead this session. We have 7 experts with us. We have so much expertise here that there's not a place for me to sit down. There are so many experts. And we all have very much reduced time frames. Each of them has their own area of expertise, so I'm going to ask them if we can deal with the time constraints. We don't have the time to cover the bios of all of the people here in full, but I'm going to do the bios in English so that I don't cause any opposition.
Just there, is Chief of Security Technology in the AVSEC branch at Transport Canada. He is primarily responsible for the development and implementation of regulations related to performance standards, testing, and technical oversight of AVSEC screening equipment deployed in Canada. Dr. Kang-Jun is the Director of Aviation Safety Office of the Korea Transportation Safety Authority of the Republic of Korea. He is an expert in aviation psychology, safety management, and accident investigation for human factors. From 2013, he engaged in aviation security through Aviation Security Voluntary Reporting System. Mr. Julien Touzeau is Product Security Director for Airbus in the Americas. Before that, Julien held several management positions in aircraft security engineering at Airbus and was in charge of the innovation in aircraft security and of the governance of aircraft security activities. Mr. Daniel Go is the assistant president of NukeTech company that we know all very well since lunch. One additional information is on the European side of this is that NukeTech is also a screening provider with the ICAO compliant detection system in several big airports. I will not quote them, but I invite you to directly link with Daniel Go if you want to know more. Miss Anne-Marie Pellerin, the only other lady in this panel, thank you Anne-Marie for that, is the founder and managing partner of LAMLA. She advised senior executive on the challenges and opportunities on the aviation and security sectors, knowing very well US and Europe, I have to say. Mr. Christopher Ross is a deputy head of the unit for security in the European Commission Directorate General for Mobility and Transport. You may know him here in Montreal with another title, as he was there and really well known as he was the head of the EU office in ICAO. And Dr. Koo Is the president of the security division of China Southern Airlines and the captain of the 3rd detachment of CAAC Air Marshals, and has been working in the field of security for 36 years. So, maintenant que vous connaissez tous nos
Now that you know all of the experts, before we begin, I would like to tell you that during this session there will be 2 polls, successive polls, and we would like you to answer them. Therefore, don't hesitate to go online to get the first questions. The first question that I want to put to our experts regards the objectives of innovation in aviation security. What is specific to aviation security? Tony, perhaps I could ask you to begin. Thank you.
Not yet.
Oh, thank you, Sonia, and thank you to ICAO for allowing me to participate in this panel. So last night I went online and I looked up on the Oxford English Dictionary the definition of innovation, and it says that innovation is a change in something that is established, especially by introducing new ideas, methods, or products. Now, in aviation security, you can think of the products, that's new technologies such as the CT X-rays at Checkpoint right now that is happening. Methods, probably a good example of that innovation is automatic screening lanes, or the way we like to call them in Canada, KOTSA Plus. And ideas, well, an idea is an idea, it's a vision. We heard a couple of ones yesterday that are very interesting, such as the open architecture checkpoint, which I found interesting. But also at Transport Canada, we have a forward-looking project, which is called the Known Traveler Digital Identity, where it's envisioned in 20, 30 years that the passenger will be using a mobile device to push data to access and facilitate pinch points throughout the travel continuum, both domestically and abroad. So normally when we think of innovation, we think of changes in an order of magnitude, but that doesn't happen too often. More than not, it's incremental changes. And what are some typical goals of innovation? So I'm going to keep this very high level now that I'm a regulator, right? So the first one of the typical goals is quality. You want to improve quality. How does that translate to AVSEC? Well, you're looking at security technologies or processes that your probability of detection of the threat goes up. Second thing of a typical goal is the time. So you want to make things faster. You're looking at productivity, efficiency, all that to increase output, and maybe some automation. How does that translate to AVSEC? Well, that's the operational efficiency. So you're looking at screening technologies or processes that increase throughput or lower false alarm rate, but definitely not at the expense of the quality, which is the probability of detection. Another objective would be convenience, customer experience, and customer needs. And again, in AVSEC, that translates to passenger satisfaction. So what does a passenger want? Doesn't want more divestiture, wants minimal intrusion, and just wants quickly get out and with no pain. Also, a thing to consider is with innovation sustainability. You want to make sure that it has a long, healthy life cycle and that the cost of ownership is not prohibitive. And I think I'll just stop there.
Merci beaucoup, Tony.
Thank you, Tony. Perhaps after having heard from the regulator, we could talk about some more specific projects. Perhaps Dr. Ku could talk to us about the China Southern Airlines projects. Thank you.
谢谢主。
Thank you, Sonia, the moderator. I would also like to thank KO for giving me this opportunity to exchange our ideas and to learn. And this morning we talked about aviation security and the sustainable development of civil aviation, and also introduced the elements of the 23 90 resolution, and also promote the facilitation and high efficiency and on-time operations of airlines. This has provided guidelines for this kind of work. In terms of innovation, technology innovation, I would like to talk about our experience at the China Southern Airlines. Every day we have 2,000 flights, over 2,000 flights every day. And we carry about 300,000 people every day. And the total amount of passengers we carry is over 100 million people. So it's number one in Asia and the third in the world. So the traditional way of aviation security has lagged behind. It cannot cope with the new demand, the greater increased number of people. So the fundamental objective of aviation security is to make sure that it is operated safely and the passengers have a very comfortable and easy experience. So in light of this demand, how are we going to achieve these objectives in terms of technical innovation? So we have to change our mindset or the response, the responsive approach that we're used to. We have to promote the information sharing among different stakeholders and to create an information platform so that we'll be able to share the experiences and information and to prevent the threats from occurring in the first place. A small example. If, for instance, one passenger in one airline, maybe he behaves badly during flight, so the air marshal will provide this clue or this information to the mobile center, so that the next flight, the security people will know exactly what happened during the prior section of the flight. So they will know how to deal with it. So they will deal with the situation very well informed. So this is what they call it, transform from a reactive approach to a proactive approach. Secondly, we establish a line of communication between the land, on land, and in the air. So we have an online communication channel. So air to land, video network, and video networking, so that the necessary information will be passed on to and from land to air. So just the small example I gave you is one such example. So we have to detect the potential threats or information on potential threat will be passed on quickly and efficiently, so that all the stakeholders will be in a position to deal with it. And we call it information sharing, dynamic deployment to ensure accurate response. Thirdly, the aviation security will not materialize without the cooperation and collaboration from all concerned. Many experts already made reference to it. We have to not only consider or rely on technology. More importantly, we have to rely on the human persons. We have to rely on the laws, the regulations, and the enforcement of such laws. So, while protecting the confidentiality, we promote the coordination and collaboration between all the stakeholders. For instance, we have worked together with the Civil Aviation Authority and the local security, public security departments to exchange information on threats or potential threats, so that we'll be able to work together to achieve aviation security objectives. Fourthly, within an airline, an air carrier, we will take we give the equal treatment to security at the airport, the airlines, to make sure that everybody has a role to play in aviation security so as to achieve the objectives. Thank you.
Merci, Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Koo. We have heard from a regulator. We've heard from the airlines. Could I ask Daniel to talk to us about technology and the innovation objectives? Is innovation, well, in fact, what are the objectives of innovation for a detection manufacturer? Thank you.
No.
Thank you, Sonia, for the question. I represent not just new tech today, but also my fellow competitors who I had consulted before coming up on stage. I think for us, as Ross has adequately put it, for us, innovation means improved detection or improved security. If you do innovation and the security level does not go up, then what's the point of innovating? So that's number one for us. Number two, to improve efficiency and productivity. Some of the innovations that you're beginning to see in checkpoints, for example, would eliminate the need for screening personnel to go and collect trays. So the automated tray return systems, for example, will increase or improve the efficiency as well as the productivities of checkpoints. Now, thirdly, for us, is the need to also make sure that cost is manageable. So we look at life cycle costs typically, not just life cycle costs, but also the need to make sure that cost is controlled going forward. Now, costs can also come in the form of making sure that our innovations are upgradable, because many times when you start to do 1Zs and 2Zs, you forget the fact that systems need to be upgraded because of new threats. So it's important for us to look at cost, the overall cost of ownership from both the life cycle perspective as well as from the upgradability perspective. Now, last but not least, from the manufacturer's perspective, it's important for us to also enhance the passenger's experience. I think in an IATA survey, we've seen that more than 95% of the passengers' expectations are that I go through a checkpoint within 5 minutes. So that's the experience expectation. So any innovation that we try to do, for example, in the checkpoint area, would try to meet that expectation to enhance the passenger's experience. So those 4 items are what, from the manufacturer side, we believe innovation, the objectives of innovations are.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I was wondering about how this symposium came after Industry Day, and we've heard quite a bit about the industry, and I know that Anne-Marie Pellerin was here, and it is she was involved in a session that is very much interconnected with this one. Are there any special approaches that you could share with us today, Anne-Marie?
Merci, Sonia.
Thank you, Sonia.
Innovation has become the buzzword, and we've covered innovation a lot over the last 24 hours. And we see lots of innovations in the market currently. As I said yesterday, I think the key to change is 20% technology and 80% people, process, and politics. So what we need is a transformation in how we think about security in the aviation domain at every level of our organizations. So security is necessary. Airlines and airports know this, but security activities are a cost center. Unlike the regulatory community, it's challenging to get C-suite executives in airlines and airports excited about transforming how we implement a long list of security requirements. Why spend more money when there's no requirement? So who cares about evolving faster and mitigating more risk? I would argue that every one of you in this room. You understand the role that governments must play in protecting the traveling public and deterring acts of unlawful interference. You have a very big stick. You can require airports and airlines to do more, but what is more and why? And can doing more, singularly defined across a diverse network, actually work? We have a choice to make as an industry. Either we maintain the status quo, security changes as governments levy new requirements based on yesterday's incidents, and these requirements, together with new standards and T&E processes, will take years to develop with fielding of new capabilities to follow thereafter. And we'll continue to have a walled garden industry and few solution providers in the market. Or we stop seeing security as an isolated activity that's all about requirements and compliance, and we start seeing it as a much bigger part of a much broader opportunity we're witnessing with exponential growth in aviation. Security requirements must be balanced against the reality of rapid growth, and we must move quickly. And this requires a new mindset, as Bernard Lim said yesterday. A new mindset, an acceptance of risk, boldness, execution, and continuous improvement. So I often hear that it's a trade-off between security and throughput. I believe that we can have both to the level that we need each in a rapidly evolving and agile system. Thanks.
Merci, Anne.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. And I'm certain that we will come back to this topic a little bit later. Perhaps before talking about the poll results, we could hear from another designer, airplane designer. Julien, would you?
Previously, specific to the aircraft and aircraft security in particular, what we are focusing in terms of innovation is more making sure that any security measures or procedures or mechanism that we implement is as seamless, as transparent as possible. So most of the effort innovation in the past years for us was toward less visible security enforcing function. They are still there. There are more and more of them, but we want to make them completely transparent, both for the passengers, our customers, and for the cockpit crews and cabin crews. So that's what is driving most of the effort. And this statement applies to both physical security issues, but also to cyber security issues. So this is one of the objectives. The other objective, specifically when talking about cyber security, is to cope with the rapid pace of the evolution of the cyber threat. So we are kind of forced to innovate and making sure that we are able to withstand and be robust against those cyber attacks. So there is no other choice than innovate again, making sure that our aircraft and the ground segment is robust to this new, it's no longer an emerging threat, it's there. And if I have 1 minute to address the second part of your question about what is specific to aviation and what is specific to aircraft in particular, is the difference between the life cycle of our product and infrastructure, the airport infrastructure, the aircraft itself, and everything that goes around, and the evolution of threat. So when we want to innovate, we have to we would like to be able to develop security solutions in months, in weeks, whereas the life cycle of our products is much longer than that. Imagine that in order to modify one line of code of a critical onboard systems, the lead time is typically 2 years. So because we are in a domain, we are in an industry which is highly regulated for good reason, and we have to demonstrate that any modification to the definition is not involving any vulnerability. So you have this lead time that is no longer compatible with the pace of innovation that is driven by the evolution of threat itself. So, but it's a topic we'll address in the second question, I guess.
Oh, yes, you're well informed. Merci.
Thank you. Perhaps we could get the results in from the questions for the room. The first poll, the question was, we're going to put it up on the screen. To respond to current and emerging threats, is innovation essential and mandatory in the short term, or is it only desirable in certain cases? And can it lead to differences in implementation and go against this will to have harmonization that we identified yesterday in the industry session? Would anybody like to respond?
Oui, non. Daniel, je sens...
I think this is an expected poll. I think there's we always say that this is a incident-driven industry. When something happens, we all jump, and then often the question is how high or how far. So I quite expect that the poll to be like this. But on point number 2, I thought that I would want to add a few thoughts. And many of you here are regulators. I think a lot of regulators have told me they are very confused because we are in, as Julian said, a very highly regulated industry. Everything requires approvals and certifications. One of my thoughts from an equipment supplier's point of view is we spent years trying to get our products certified by, say, the TSA or ICAO or CAAC. I was wondering whether it would make more sense for all these regulators to get together and perhaps harmonize their standards, because we are fighting terrorism globally. We are all trying to fight threats against terrorism, threats against civil aviation globally. It would be good for industries like us, manufacturers, if these regulators can come together and harmonize their standard. We go to a single body to get it certified. Now, there are a few advantages, I should say. First, speed to market. We'll be able to get these products to market much quicker. Imagine the average time taken for us, each of us, to get any of this approval is 2 to 3 years. And if you add them all up, it's quite a long time before our solutions, our innovations actually get out in the market. Secondly, costs. It's a lot more efficient if we go to one regulator and get this our product certified or approved. If you go to 3 different regulators, or 4 in the case of some countries, or other countries, then it all adds up. And by the way, in the end, the airports or the end users are paying for it. So I just boldly suggest that the regulators, the people who are sitting here in this, in this auditorium, consider, the fact that you could harmonize, which is the second most selected item in the poll. Thank you very much.
Merci, Daniel.
Thank you, Daniel. That is a message we heard a lot yesterday, and I think it's important for that message to get out. I think I'll move to the second question, because we are moving from what innovation is all about to what to do in certain situations. So we're going to think about how we can create a framework to foster innovation. But before I give the floor to our panelists, I would like to say that there is a second poll, and I'll be coming back to that toward the end. But you can look at the questions online. Perhaps I could turn to Dr. Lee and ask him to tell us about an actual example of a framework that enables decision-making. And we have some slides.
Merci.
Yeah, thank you, Sonia. Today, I'd like to mention innovation through aviation security reporting system. Aviation security voluntary reporting itself is not a technology, but it is closely related to innovation or development of technology in aviation security. So we have not enough time, so I will briefly explain in my presentation. Second slide, please. Yeah, CASERS. CASERS is acronym for Korea Aviation Security Voluntary Reporting System. It is established to collect security hazardous information, to modify deficiencies, and to enhance aviation security system. CASERS is preliminarily operated by the Korea Transportation Safety Authority from April 2014. After that, it is officially operated according to Korea Aviation Security Act. KOTSAs focus on minor incident and or normal event rather than serious incident in operating aviation security system. KOTSAs abide by three principles, that is, confidentiality, non-punitive, and the need to know. When it comes to innovations through KOTSAs, let me introduce major issues through KOTSAs. Various events are reported to KOTSAs, something like that, restricted item on flight, security screening procedures, non-cooperative airport personnel in access control, and unruly passengers on flight. Among them, technical problem related to aviation security equipment is important information for improvement of aviation security equipment. If any report is received to KOTSAs, we analyze the cause and propose recommendations for improvement to security service providers and security equipment manufacturers. So, in my thought, aviation security reporting system is useful to develop and to improve aviation security technology and play a key role to innovate aviation security system. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. On this question as to how to create an innovation framework, I'd like to start by asking Julien Touzeau, as a manufacturer who has a number of frameworks in place, what is the right kind of framework to create to foster innovation?
Already, I would say, a lot of frameworks that exist at national, regional, international level to promote and foster innovation, in which our industry and most of the players in this industry are part of. So you already have this framework in place that are supposed to help you developing innovation in a timely manner. The thing is, we have to distinguish between who is driving the innovation and who is leading the innovation, and with whom shall we work to accelerate and integrate innovation in our product. Actually, for us, and for me in particular, I think that the main driver for innovation, which is different from a leader, but the main driver is, of course, regulation. But beyond the regulator, I think the main driver is the customer itself. So we have to listen to the customers. Customers can be the airport operator, can be the airport users, can be the aircraft operator. And we have to listen to them. What are they expecting from us as designer of security functions? And we have to listen to them and develop and find the right innovation to fulfill their needs. That's the driver. In terms of leadership, of course, you cannot expect from me to say anything else than that the leaders in innovation is the industry, but also the laboratory, whether they are public or private. But of course, this is where you will find the most innovative and disruptive ideas. So any initiative at the regulatory level which aims at enabling the industry in all its components, whether it's a large security company or a large manufacturer or a small laboratory, a small startup, is welcome. And I think here the key word is agility. For decades, big companies or big laboratories were able to produce disruptive ideas, disruptive innovation. What we see today with the convergence of physical and cyber security in what is called now cyber physical security, you find completely disruptive ideas in very small companies, in startups. So the word agility is key, and most of the big companies do it, not all of them, but we have to work hand in hand with those small companies. We must work with them to help to integrate their idea, but also to help this small company enter this big market and go beyond the entry bar. It's very intimidating for a 5-people company to talk to nation states, to big organization, and to the regulator. And if we stay in our corner without talking to this small company, we will completely miss huge opportunity. And that's what we are trying to do at Airbus. We have put in place a couple of years ago an initiative called Biz Lab, where we incubate startups. We help them developing their ID. Some of them end up spinning off as a standalone company. Some of these ID end up in our product. Some of these IDs are on aviation security. So that's our answer, and that's the framework we like the most, where big companies and small companies work together to be agile and respond in timely manner to the new threats.
Donc en fait, lorsqu'on est
So, when it's a startup, you have to think big, and major manufacturer who is already established can help startups get in touch with regulators. So let's hear from the top regulator. Perhaps Christopher can give us some pointers as to how to create this framework. We've talked a lot about states, but also groups of states like the EU.
Thank you very much, Sonia, and it's a pleasure to be back here in Montreal, and thank you for inviting me to participate in this panel. I'd like to suggest to you that there are 3 main components to a framework enabling innovation. The first is the legal framework must be flexible, and it must promote innovation. This is why in the European aviation security legislation, we have specifically included provisions that allow for trials. We derogate from our rules, and we allow the member states to test new technologies. And we've had quite a bit of success with this. In fact, just last week, the EU member states in the Aviation Regulatory Security Committee adopted amendments to our aviation security legislation that included the outcome of trials for these new technologies. And specifically, I'd like to cite SHU explosive detection equipment and explosive vapor detection equipment. We also have a number of trials which are ongoing in Europe in terms of EDS for cabin baggage. I think there are around 14 trials that are ongoing in Europe at this time, and a number of European airports have actually decided to make that a definitive solution. A second important component is a good dialogue with key actors who are involved in innovation. This is really essential. Of course, we have these mechanisms in place with the member states, but also with our aviation international partners, with ICAO, with ECAC, and with the European Commission's Science Office, the Joint Research Center, which is in fact now developing test kits for aviation security equipment for our European aviation security inspectors. And third, I'd like to cite appropriate transition times. This is important to help the operators, to help the airports to overcome the challenges, for manufacturers to be able to make the necessary R&D investment and to know ahead of time the level of performance they will need to reach. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup, Christophe.
Thank you very much, Christopher. It's interesting to see that in Europe we have a number of systems, and I'd like to know if Tony, on the other side of the pond, can tell us about equivalent systems, or do you have a different point of view as to how to create a framework that enables innovation?
I'd like to give the Canadian perspective to this question because it involves a lot of components. So in Canada's National Civil Aviation Security Program, we have several guiding principles, and I think all these guiding principles can be used very effectively and should be used in a framework that can enable innovation. So, for example, guiding principle number 1 is that risk-based approach actually yields the most effective security possible at this time. Another guiding principle is that we regard industry as a mature security partner. That means the airports, the screening authority like KOTSA, they know their business very well and they can manage their business, and it's up to them to remain compliant. Now there are checks and balances in that, there's oversight programs, but by and large they know what they're doing and they can remain compliant managing themselves. And that lends to a holistic approach to security, where the airport and the screening authority have a say in what they choose to implement or test or evaluate, as in conjunction with Transport Canada, for example, the regulator, what technologies and processes they feel, innovative technologies they feel would help best their needs. And that's like the basis of like outcome or performance-based regulations, which work on the whole more effectively than prescriptive based, and that lends a whole flexibility to lends a whole flexibility to the system. For instance, a lot of the testing of innovative technologies done in Canada is mostly done by KOTSA. If a piece of equipment is deployed, it has to meet regulation and performance standards, but on the whole, KOTSA does the bulk of the testing alongside with Transport Canada. So what does all that mean in sort of a framework? Well, I think it involves it involves roadmaps and sharing of information. So for example, the regulator should be setting out its priorities, its vision, its roadmap for the next 2, 5, 10 years, see what program developments are going to be happening based on their security needs. They will engage with other intergovernmental departments who are in the same boat. They have their own security mandates. And there will be an engagement and exchange of views, and perhaps the regulatory roadmap will be tweaked. Once that happens, then it goes and it's shared with industry and with manufacturers. At the same time, industry and manufacturers will share their roadmap, so that we'll see where they envision their products will be in a certain time. Does that meet our program development programs deployed at that time? And all this results in common priorities and common overlaps. Just to go further now, so for the testing part, well, this was mentioned yesterday, but it's the approach that we use too. We call it gated testing. It's called layered testing, but you want to set up your testing for new innovation and new innovative technology so that if the equipment's not going to make it, it's not going to pass, not going to be approved or certified, that it's done very quickly. So it's a fail early scenario where resources are not spent going through the bitter end of watching this thing not being certified, and feedback is given immediately back to the manufacturer so that they can modify, improve, and resubmit. So that's the way we envision that. And then the last part is the approval process, which I know for many manufacturers looks to be like a dark and complex and time-consuming process. But you know, there can be a lot of improvements made there too.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Tony, for the substance and for the honesty. And Marie, do you have anything to add that hasn't been dealt with yet that we didn't deal with yesterday?
Sure. So just to summarize kind of some of the key points that came out of yesterday in terms of enabling this transformation or change. The first point was more trials and tighter feedback loops in all categories. Second point, closing the gap between research and development and rollout. So more agile procurement and acquisition approaches. The third is information sharing to harmonize testing and evaluation processes, which Daniel spoke about. The fourth, better information from ICAO on why certain types of technologies may be better from a detection perspective than others. So publication of that information internationally and making it readily available. The fifth, new public-private partnership approaches. So how can we jointly put money into the pot to pay for advancements in technology and processes? And six, more data, better analytics, and more continuous improvement. So those are all ways to get new and better capabilities to the field faster, the themes from yesterday. A second point that I would raise is reframing the problem. So we at LAMLA work with a range of newcomers to the market, so new technology companies or manpower companies. They're looking to break into aviation security. And the first question that I always ask them is, what's the problem you're trying to solve? What exactly is your technology capable of doing for someone that's going to make their lives better or easier? And I think sometimes as an industry, we need to get better about asking the right question around what's the problem, right? So if you ask, what's the problem? Better detection, so is the problem. We're not necessarily with our systems finding everything we need to find. That's a problem. But whose problem is that? And who's willing to put money on the table to solve that problem, right? We need to get people faster through our checkpoints because we don't have the capacity to deal with growth. That's a big problem. And whose problem is that? So all of these problems belong to different people, and so that's why collaboration is so key in terms of helping new and emerging entrants into the market actually last long enough to be able to deploy their solutions that actually is going to help all of us.
Merci beaucoup, Anne-Marie.
Thank you very much, Anne-Marie. I've heard a lot about information sharing, and we can share information on the spot, but everybody has a different task. The essential thing, however, is to make sure that we convey our findings at the right time. Could we have the results of the second poll question? We had a question related to what we discussed in the room. And there's quite a dominant answer to the effect that it's the airports and industry who are going to be using these solutions and take the lead in driving innovation. That's interesting because from a technical point of view, they're the ones missing from the panel. So it's important to get feedback from the room in response to what you said. Let me move on to the next question that you did your homework on.
Qui est la place de la technologie?
What is the place of technology in innovation? And you answered this question partially. Let me remind us what you said. It's not just about technology. We also identified a link between the human factors and the safety, security culture. Dr. Koo and Dr. Lee both mentioned this, and Anne-Marie mentioned that it's 20% technology, 80% human factor at the various levels. And this also came out in what Christopher said. So would you like to add anything to those comments and help us understand technology in innovation? I don't want to go back to the testing, but I want to focus on innovation and security in the future. Anne-Marie, do you have anything to add on this?
So thanks, Sonia. Just quickly, I saw a quote a couple of days ago from a guy named Dean Kamen, who was an inventor in the 1950s. He said, "Every once in a while, a new technology, an old problem, and a big idea turn into an innovation." So I think we're not short on technology, but again, have we accurately framed the problem, and do we have the courage to collectively go after the big ideas?
Merci, Anne-Marie.
Thank you, Anne-Marie. Julien?
Thank you. Of course, technology has a huge, role to play in innovation. Of course, it's so obvious we want to develop further. And don't make me wrong, my background is engineer, so I'm a techno freak and everything. But what I've seen and what we emphasize on today is on innovation in processes and procedures. There are many ways where we can improve radically aviation security in one domain by closely look at how people are operating, are doing their daily job. And by using the existing technology, but in a different way or at a different time, we can radically improve the overall level of security. I've got a very simple example that happened to us. So we are focusing a lot on supply chain security at the moment. It's really a big deal. Security, the integrity and authenticity of hardware and software that ends up on the aircraft, of course. So this is a big topic for us. And by looking at the way people are performing the maintenance tasks on the industrial equipment in an assembly line or on a manufacturing site, there are vulnerability to cyber attacks that you can easily reduce or counter by just modifying the procedure. So it's not rocket science. Most of the time it's about sitting at the same table with the blue collars, with the workers, with the process engineers, and refining the way they work and introducing a little bit of technology, of existing technology in their processes, and you get rid of a big chunk of the vulnerability and the possibility for a threat to arise. So yeah, techno is big, but process is completely underrated, and there is a lot of benefit in terms of aviation security at looking at the existing way of working.
Merci Julien.
Thank you, Julien. Especially, that's especially useful coming from somebody who is very productive. Dr. Koo? Would you like to give us your view on technology?
Merci.
Thank you. Previously, I have talked about the purpose of aviation innovation is to secure the security of every flight, so all the passengers can enjoy the experience better. And for the airlines, we have to achieve this purpose. Without technology, no innovation can really play its proper role. In our daily work, we have established an integrated management system from ground to air, which is supported by our policies. So for the airport personnel, we have given them equipment for them to collect information, digitize information on the possible problems that may occur during flight, including all fronts. So this personnel can understand the current situation and can also undertake security work in a timely manner. In the case of emergency, the personnel can also rely on the information supplied from the ground in order to address the emergencies properly. Second, to address all the problems that occur while undertaking their work, through those mobile terminals, they can see all the information supplied from the ground, and then we can also have a more systematic overview of the situation. And on the ground, we can also put forward responses in order to manage the arrivals or departures better. This is what we call the integrated system from air to ground. And since the advent of Wi-Fi, now we can transmit images or texts from air to ground or ground to air. By doing so, we can correctly direct each other to improve our responses in air so we can interact better. On the third front, with regard to new technologies, China Southern Airlines operate many flights daily. Without these new technologies and new equipment, it's impossible for us to realize any innovation or to manage these flights to ensure regularity of flights. From airport, public security departments, and other departments and agencies have also provided us with very sound advice, and we also benefit from such collaboration and cooperation. Lastly, GASIP is a very useful tool under which the airlines around the world should establish a collaborative mechanism between the government departments and airlines, which should be led by the government. The security situation around the world is getting more challenging. Therefore, the airlines cannot just work in silo. We should take into account of all fronts. Aviation security is also part of the national security. Therefore, the work in aviation security should be led by the government. There are so many airlines, and at every juncture of our operation, we should follow the Global Aviation Security Plan. By doing so, we can achieve better results overall. In conclusion, among airlines, we should also have a better collaboration mechanism in order to share security information and to improve our overall security management in order to achieve the purpose of sharing information on the security front. And we also hope that ICAO can play its role to lead the governments and airlines to enhance the overall aviation security level for all. Thank you.
Merci, Dr.
Thank you, Dr. Koo. As we will soon see, and we've already heard from industry on this, I would like to ask if there is a regulator, perhaps Christopher, who could give us the point of view from the regulators, even if we have already heard some information during the previous questions.
Sure. 2 points. First, I think it's important that we recall the lessons learned or lessons noted from the previous panel. In particular, the human element. Innovation must be broad in scope. Innovative ways of mitigating threat are by no means solely reliant on technological solutions. Second remark, and for this I'd like to refer to our opening panel today, and that's to re-emphasize the importance of growth. Innovation is not a luxury, it's a must. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We're at the end of our session. I would like to make 2 or 3 comments. I know that some of you might have asked questions through the application, the app, but the problem is that we only have an hour, and I was unable to look at the questions that were asked. I think it would be too complicated. There were a good number of questions. The experts didn't see them. They were about dangerous goods, detection of dangerous goods in hold baggage, also about how do you innovate, innovation in tests, how do you move ahead with that. So I would ask you to take a look at some of these questions, and perhaps you could speak to the people who asked the questions outside the hall. I would also like to thank the participants in this session. I think there are some things that we could list, the innovations of tomorrow, for instance, but what do we do to make sure that there are new ideas coming in, and what do we do with those ideas when they arrive? much work was put into preparing for this session on the part of everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you to ICAO, and thank you to the interpreters for allowing us to finish this trilingual session almost on time, just 5 minutes behind schedule. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.